Millionaire CEO follows janitor who took leftovers home every day, and what he saw broke his heart. Before anything else, if you're watching this from a place of struggle, know that you're not alone. Drop a heart below. Robert Blackwell stood at his office window on the 38th floor, watching the city lights flicker to life as dusk settled over Manhattan. At 64, he had everything money could buy: a corner office in the gleaming Blackwell Tower, a portfolio worth billions, and a reputation as one of the most ruthless business minds in America. Yet, tonight, like most nights, he would return to an empty penthouse apartment, eat a solitary meal prepared by his personal chef, and fall asleep watching financial news. He glanced at his watch, 8:17 p.m. The cleaning staff would be making their rounds now. For some reason, that thought caused him to pause. Robert had always prided himself on knowing everything that happened in his company, Blackwell Innovations, but lately he'd begun to realize how little he knew about the people who actually kept the place running. Robert gathered his belongings and headed toward the elevator. As he passed the executive lounge, he noticed someone inside. Through the partially open door, he caught sight of an older man in a grey uniform, carefully packaging leftover sandwiches and pastries from that afternoon's board meeting. The man worked methodically, wrapping each item in napkins before placing them in a paper bag. The janitor, Samuel Wilson, according to his name tag, glanced up and froze when he saw Robert standing in the doorway. "Mr. Blackwell, I'm sorry, sir. I was just cleaning up," Sam stammered, quickly closing the paper bag. Robert had seen this man before, always quietly moving through the building, invisible to most of the executives. He'd never given him much thought until last week when his assistant Michael had mentioned something curious. The cleaning guy on this floor, Sam, he takes home leftovers every single night, Michael had said. Been doing it for years. Now, looking at the nervous man before him, Robert felt a surge of curiosity mixed with suspicion. "It's fine," Robert said, his voice measured. "That food would just go to waste anyway." Relief washed over Sam's weathered face. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate that." Robert nodded and continued toward the elevator. But something about the encounter lingered in his mind. Why would a man collect leftover food so methodically, night after night, for years? Was it just frugality? Or something else? The next morning, Robert found himself distracted during his executive meeting. As his CFO droned on about quarterly projections, Robert's thoughts kept returning to the janitor and that paper bag. "Michael," Robert called to his assistant after the meeting, "what do we know about Samuel Wilson?" Michael looked surprised. "The janitor? Not much, sir. He's been with the company about 15 years. Never missed a day, according to HR. Quiet. A guy keeps to himself, and the leftovers, he takes them every night, pretty much. Is there a problem, sir?" Robert waved the question away. "No, just curious." But curiosity was an unfamiliar sensation for Robert. He'd spent decades focused solely on the bottom line, on acquisitions and profits. People were resources, not puzzles to be solved. Yet for reasons he couldn't articulate, he found himself thinking about Sam throughout the day. That evening, Robert stayed late again. He watched from his office as Sam made his usual rounds, cleaning the executive floor with meticulous care. When Sam entered the conference room where that day's lunch had been served, Robert waited a few minutes, then followed. Once again, Sam was carefully packaging leftover food. This time, several gourmet sandwiches and a container of pasta salad. He worked with the precision of someone who had performed this ritual countless times. Robert cleared his throat, and Sam looked up, startled. "Mr. Blackwell, I didn't realize you were still here." "Why do you take the leftovers, Sam?" Robert asked, directly, surprising himself with the bluntness of the question. Sam's hands stilled. For a moment he seemed to consider a lie, then sighed. "It's a long story, sir. I've got time," Robert said, leaning against the doorframe. Sam looked down at the bag in his hands. "It's not for me," he said quietly. It's for my wife, Lisa. Something in Sam's voice, a mixture of love and deep sadness, caught Robert off guard. Before Sam could continue, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face paled. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell. I need to go. It's my wife. She needs me home now." Robert watched as Sam hurriedly gathered his things and rushed toward the service elevator, still clutching the paper bag of leftovers. That night, as Robert sat in his luxury car being driven home, he made a decision that would change the course of multiple lives. Tomorrow, he would follow Samuel Wilson and discover what was really happening with those leftover meals. Little did he know that what he would see would shatter the carefully constructed walls around his heart. The next evening, Robert dismissed his driver and took an unmarked company car from the executive garage. He felt ridiculous, a 64-year-old billionaire playing detective, but something about Sam Wilson's story had lodged in his mind like a splinter he couldn't remove. At 9:15 p.m., Sam emerged from the service entrance, paper bag in hand. He walked briskly to the subway station, and Robert followed at a distance. After a 30-minute ride to Queens, Sam exited and walked 5 blocks to a modest apartment building with peeling paint and a rusted fire escape. Robert watched from his car as Sam climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Through the thin curtains of apartment 3B, Robert could see Sam's silhouette moving about. He appeared to be arranging something on a table. Then another figure, smaller, seated, came into view. Sam leaned down, seemingly helping this person with something. Robert sat in his car for almost an hour, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with his surveillance. What was he doing here? This wasn't like him at all. Robert Blackwell didn't concern himself with the lives of employees, especially not maintenance staff, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Sam's story, something that might explain why a man his age was still working night shifts, carefully collecting leftover food. The next morning, Robert called the head of human resources to his office. "Tell me about Samuel Wilson's benefits package," he demanded without preamble. Gloria Chen, his HR director for over a decade, raised an eyebrow. "Sam Wilson? The janitor?" "Yes. I want to know what healthcare coverage he has. Family situation." "Everything," Gloria tapped on her tablet. "Samuel Wilson, age 67, been with us 15 years. Basic healthcare package. Nothing extraordinary." She paused, scanning further. "His wife, Lisa Wilson, was removed from our insurance records about 8 years ago." "Removed? Why?" "According to our files, she has Medicare now. There's a note here about a serious medical condition, but the details aren't specified. Company policy doesn't require—" "Find out," Robert interrupted. "Get me a complete picture of their situation by end of day." That evening, Robert found himself standing in the hospital corridor of Queen's Memorial. Gloria's investigation had revealed that Lisa Wilson had been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's at just 52. Now, at 60, she required specialized care that Medicare only partially covered. Robert's stomach tightened as he watched Sam shuffle into his wife's hospital room, still carrying that paper bag from Blackwell Tower. Through the partially open door, Robert could see a thin woman in the bed, her face brightening as Sam entered. "I brought your favorites today, sweetheart," Sam's voice carried into the hallway. "Those little sandwiches with the cucumber and cream cheese you love." "You're so good to me, Sammy." Lisa's voice was frail but warm. "Did you eat already?" "Of course I did," Sam lied smoothly, setting out the food for her. Robert watched as Sam tenderly helped his wife sit up, placing a napkin on her lap with the care one might show a child. He cut the sandwiches into tiny pieces and patiently helped her eat, all while telling her about his day in an upbeat voice that belied the exhaustion evident in his stooped shoulders. Robert had seen enough. He retreated down the hallway, something unfamiliar and uncomfortable churning in his chest. Sam wasn't taking the food for himself. He was bringing it to his wife. pretending it was specially purchased for her, preserving her dignity while he himself likely went hungry. As Robert drove back to Manhattan, the image of Sam's gentle hands cutting those tiny sandwich pieces haunted him. When was the last time Robert had cared for anyone that way? Had he ever? His phone rang, displaying his CFO's name. Another acquisition opportunity had emerged, a struggling tech company ripe for dismantling. Normally, Robert would have felt the familiar rush of anticipation at such news. Instead, he found himself wondering how many Sams and Lisas would lose their health care if he gutted the company. "Mr. Blackwell, are you there?" His CFO's voice prodded. "I'll call you back," Robert said, ending the call abruptly. For the first time in decades, Robert Blackwell found himself questioning the foundation upon which he'd built his empire, and the man he'd become while building it. Robert spent a restless night, his thoughts continually returning to the Wilsons. By morning, he'd made a decision that surprised even himself. He found Sam in the supply closet on the executive floor, organizing cleaning products. "Mr. Wilson," Robert said, causing Sam to nearly drop the bottle in his hand. "I'd like to speak with you privately." Sam's face drained of color. "Sir, if this is about the food, it's not what you think," Robert assured him, leading the way to his office. Once inside, Robert gestured for Sam to sit, something that had never happened before. Sam perched anxiously on the edge of a chair worth more than his monthly salary. "I saw you at the hospital last night," Robert said directly. Sam's eyes widened. "You followed me?" "I did. And I'd like to help." Sam stared at him in disbelief. "Help? How?" "I want to pay for your wife's care, a private room, specialized treatment, whatever she needs." The silence that followed was heavy. Sam's weathered hands twisted in his lap. "Why would you do that?" he finally asked, suspicion evident in his voice. It was a fair question, one Robert wasn't entirely sure he could answer. He'd spent decades cultivating a reputation for ruthlessness, not charity. "Let's just say I've been rethinking some things," Robert replied. "Your dedication to your wife, it's admirable." Sam studied Robert's face, searching for the catch. "Mr. Blackwell, with all due respect, people like you don't just help people like me without wanting something in return." The words stung with their truth. "No strings attached," Robert insisted. "Consider it a long overdue bonus for your years of service." Sam stood abruptly. "I don't want charity, sir. Lisa and I have managed for 8 years. We'll keep managing." "Even if it's killing you both?" Robert challenged. "I've seen your personnel file, Sam. You haven't taken a sick day in 15 years. You're working yourself to death while your wife receives substandard care." Sam's jaw tightened. "It's not substandard. The nurses at Queen's Memorial are angels, but they're understaffed and underfunded. Lisa could be getting better treatment." "We don't take handouts," Sam said firmly, moving toward the door. "Then, how about a deal?" Robert called after him. "Work for me personally, not as a janitor, as a consultant." Sam turned back, confusion written across his face. "Consultant? For what?" Robert improvised quickly. "Employee welfare. You understand this company from the ground up in ways I never could. Help me see Blackwell. Innovations through your eyes. And in exchange, you and Lisa get comprehensive health care, the best specialists, a private nurse if needed." Sam's expression shifted from suspicion to cautious hope. "You're serious?" "Completely. 1 hour of your time each day. You tell me what really happens in this building when I'm not looking." Sam considered this for a long moment. "Lisa's doctor mentioned an experimental treatment program. Medicare won't cover it. Consider it done," Robert said. "We can start the paperwork today." Something changed in Sam's posture, a slight straightening of his shoulders, as if a crushing weight had been momentarily lifted. "I'll need to think about it," he said, "and discuss it with Lisa if she's having a good day." "Of course," Robert nodded. "Take all the time you need." After Sam left, Robert sat motionless at his desk. What had he just done? This impulsive offer went against every business principle he'd ever followed. Yet somehow it felt more important than any deal he'd ever made. That evening, as Robert packed up to leave, his private elevator opened to reveal Michael, his assistant, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "Sir, there's something you should know," Michael said, "about Samuel Wilson." "What is it?" Robert asked. "He used to be Dr. Wilson, a neurologist actually, gave it all up when his wife got sick." Robert felt as if the air had been knocked from his lungs. "A doctor? Sam was a doctor?" Michael nodded. "One of the best in his field, according to what I found. Specialized in neurodegenerative diseases. Ironic, considering." The revelation hit Robert like a physical blow. The gentle hands that now scrubbed toilets and mopped floors had once performed delicate brain surgeries. The man who carefully wrapped leftover sandwiches had once been at the forefront of his field. "Why didn't he tell me?" Robert murmured. "Would it have mattered before yesterday?" Michael asked quietly. The following afternoon, Robert received a text from an unknown number. "Lisa is having a good day. We can talk. 7 p.m. Queen's Memorial." Robert cancelled his dinner meeting with Japanese investors without hesitation. By 6:45, he was walking down the sterile hallway of the hospital's long-term care wing, feeling oddly nervous. He found Sam sitting beside Lisa's bed, holding her hand. The room was small but neat, with a few family photos and a vase of fresh daisies on the windowsill. Lisa Wilson had once been beautiful. Robert could see that in the curves of her face, now thinned by illness. Her eyes lit up with curiosity. When Robert entered, "You must be Mr. Blackwell," she said, her voice stronger than he expected. "Sam told me about your unusual offer." Robert nodded, struck by the clarity in her gaze. "Mrs. Wilson, it's a pleasure to meet you." "It's Dr. Wilson, actually," she corrected with a gentle smile, "though I haven't practiced medicine in some time." Robert's surprise must have shown on his face. Sam sighed. "We both were. Lisa was a pediatric surgeon, that's how we met." "Two doctors," Robert said, pieces clicking into place. And now we're here." Lisa finished for him. "Life takes unexpected turns, doesn't it, Mr. Blackwell?" There was no bitterness in her voice, only a wistful acceptance that humbled Robert. He took the chair Sam offered him. "Michael told me you were a neurologist," Robert said to Sam. "He didn't mention that Lisa was a surgeon." "We had a good life," Sam said simply. "Great practices, a beautiful home in Connecticut. Then Lisa started forgetting things, small things at first, where she put her keys, appointments. I diagnosed myself," Lisa added with a sad smile. "Ordered my own tests, early onset Alzheimer's. I was 52. We sold everything," Sam continued. "The house, cars, investments, put it all into experimental treatments. None of which worked," Lisa sighed, "and then the money ran out." "Why didn't you ask for help?" Robert inquired. "Surely your colleagues—" "We did," Sam's voice hardened. "For a while, but there's only so long people will support what looks like a lost cause." Lisa squeezed her husband's hand. "Sam gave up everything, his practice, our friends, his reputation, all to care for me. I took the janitor position because it offered health insurance," Sam explained. "And evening hours meant I could be with Lisa during the day, when she needs me most." Robert felt a profound shame wash over him. For 15 years, this brilliant doctor had cleaned his office, emptied his trash, and silently endured, while Robert had never once looked him in the eye or learned his story. "The experimental treatment program," Robert said. "Tell me about it." Hope flickered across Sam's tired face. "It's a new approach using targeted immunotherapy. Early results are promising for slowing progression in cases like Lisa's. It's extremely expensive," Lisa added, "and considered too experimental for Medicare." "Cost isn't an issue," Robert assured them. "If you're willing to try it, I'll make it happen." Lisa studied him with the penetrating gaze of someone accustomed to reading people. "Why are you doing this, Mr. Blackwell? Sam says you've never spoken more than 2 words to him in 15 years. It was the question Robert had been asking himself since this strange journey began. Why did he care so suddenly about these 2 people? "Because I need to," he answered honestly. "Because I've spent my life building wealth while ignoring its purpose." Lisa nodded, seemingly satisfied with his answer. "Then we accept your help, Mr. Blackwell, and Sam will help you in return." As Robert left the hospital that night, he felt lighter somehow. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, he had made a decision based not on profit or strategic advantage, but on a simple human connection. His phone buzzed with messages from investors and board members, all demanding his attention for matters that suddenly seemed trivial. Robert silenced the device and drove home in contemplative silence. Tomorrow he would begin seeing his company, his life's work, through the eyes of a man who had sacrificed everything for love. The thought was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. "What do you notice first when you enter this building each day?" Robert asked Sam. It was 7 a.m. and they were sitting in Robert's office. This was their first official consultation. Though Robert wasn't entirely sure what he expected to gain from it, Sam considered the question. "The contrast," he finally said, "between the lobby, all that marble and glass, and the break room where the maintenance staff eats lunch. Same building, different worlds." "Explain," Robert prompted, genuinely curious. "Your lobby cost millions to design, with that waterfall wall and Italian marble. But the break room where Maria, who's cleaned this building for 20 years, eats. Lunch has broken chairs and a microwave from 2005, Robert frowned. He'd never set foot in the staff break room. "The executive floor has fresh orchids delivered weekly," Sam continued. "That's Jenny's job. She's worked here 12 years. She waters the plants at 5 a.m. before anyone arrives. She has arthritis. So bad she can barely hold the watering can some days, but she's afraid to ask for time off for a doctor's appointment." "Why?" "Because Carmen was fired last year after missing work for her son's asthma attack. At least, that's what everyone believes." Robert's frown deepened. "That can't be right. We have policies. Policies on paper and practices in reality are often different things, Mr. Blackwell." For the next hour, Sam painted a picture of Blackwell Innovations that Robert had never seen before. A parallel company where maintenance workers shared prescription medications because they couldn't afford their own, where administrative assistants worked through lunch to avoid falling behind, where janitors like Sam collected leftover food to supplement meager salaries. "I had no idea," Robert said when Sam finished. "Of course you didn't," Sam replied without accusation. "You've never had to." That afternoon, Robert cancelled his meetings and did something unprecedented. He toured his own building incognito, dressed in maintenance coveralls borrowed from Sam. What he saw confirmed everything Sam had described. He witnessed a security guard soaking his swollen feet in a bucket of ice water during his break, an administrative assistant quietly crying in the supply closet after being berated by an executive. The break room, with its broken chairs and ancient appliances. By the time he returned to his office, Robert was both shaken and resolute. He immediately called Gloria from HR to his office. "We need to make some changes," he announced without preamble. Gloria looked startled. "What kind of changes, sir?" "Everything. Healthcare, paid leave, working conditions." Robert pushed a handwritten list across his desk. "Start with these." Gloria scanned the list, her eyes widening. "Mr. Blackwell, these changes would cost millions annually. I'm aware. The board will never approve." "I don't need their approval," Robert cut her off. "Set up a discretionary fund from my personal accounts. This stays between us for now." After Gloria left, Robert sat in silence, watching the sun set over the city. For decades, he'd viewed Blackwell Innovations as his greatest achievement. Now, he wondered if it might also be his greatest failure. That evening, he visited Lisa again. She was having another good day, and the three of them played cards for an hour. Robert found himself laughing genuinely for the first time in years at Lisa's dry wit and Sam's understated humor. As he was leaving, Lisa called him back. "Robert," she said, using his first name for the first time, "whatever Sam is showing you, really, see it. Don't just look. I'm trying," he promised. "Good, because I think you needed Sam as much as we needed you." Her words followed Robert home, echoing in his mind as he entered his empty penthouse. On an impulse, he opened his laptop and began searching for information on early-onset Alzheimer's. He read medical journals until dawn, trying to understand the disease that was stealing Lisa's brilliant mind piece by piece. What he discovered both devastated and galvanized him. The treatment program Lisa and Sam pinned their hopes on was promising but far from certain, and beyond that specific program, research funding for Alzheimer's had been cut dramatically in recent years. Robert closed his laptop as the sun rose. Over Manhattan, an idea was forming, one that went far beyond helping a single couple. But first, he needed to understand more about the man who had unwittingly begun to transform his worldview. On Friday evening, Robert drove to Connecticut. Using information Michael had quietly gathered, he found himself parked outside a stunning colonial home in an exclusive neighborhood. The Wilsons' former residence, Michael had told him, sold at a significant loss 8 years ago to fund Lisa's initial treatments. Robert watched as a young family played on the sprawling lawn, new owners enjoying the life Sam and Lisa had. Lost. What must it have been like for Sam to give up this beautiful home, to trade surgical instruments for mops and buckets? His phone rang. It was Sam. Lisa's had a setback. Sam's voice was tight with worry. "She didn't recognize me this morning. The doctors say it might be temporary, but I'm on my way," Robert said immediately. At the hospital, Robert found Sam sitting in the hallway outside Lisa's room, his face buried in his hands. He looked up as Robert approached, revealing eyes red from crying. "They're running tests," Sam explained. She woke up confused, asking for her father, who's been dead for 20 years. Then she got frightened when I tried to calm her. Robert sat beside him, unsure what to say. How did one comfort a man watching his wife disappear before his eyes? "I've been reading about the disease," Robert finally offered. "About the treatment program." Sam nodded absently. "The Munich Protocol. It's showing promise in early trials. I've made some calls," Robert continued. "Dr. Saunders at Mount Sinai has agreed to oversee Lisa's case, and I've arranged for her transfer to their neurology wing, where she can begin the treatment immediately." Sam stared at him in disbelief. "Mount Sinai? But the waiting list for the protocol is months long." Robert didn't mention the sizable donation he'd made to secure Lisa's place. "It's done. They're expecting her on Monday." For a moment, Sam seemed unable to speak. Then, to Robert's shock, the proud man broke down, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Hesitantly, Robert placed a hand on Sam's back, feeling the bones of his spine through the thin fabric of his shirt. When had Sam last eaten a proper meal, taken a full night's sleep? "There's more," Robert said when Sam had composed himself. "I've arranged for you to take a leave of absence, with full pay and benefits, of course. But my job will be waiting when you're ready to return." "If you want to return," Sam looked at him sharply. "What does that mean?" Robert took a deep breath. "I visited your old home today in Connecticut." A flash of pain crossed Sam's face. "Why would you do that?" "Because I needed to understand what you've lost, what was taken from you." "Nothing was taken," Sam corrected firmly. "We made choices, difficult ones, but choices nonetheless." "Choices no one should have to make," Robert countered. You were one of the top neurologists in the country. Sam, your research on neural regeneration was groundbreaking. Sam's eyes widened. You've been investigating me. I have, Robert admitted, and I found something interesting. The foundation of your research, the theory you were developing before Lisa's diagnosis, it's being explored again. A team at Johns Hopkins is building on your work. Sam went very still. I wasn't aware. They're making progress, but they've hit obstacles. Obstacles you might have already solved had circumstances been different. The implication hung in the air between them. Sam stared at his hands, surgeon's hands, now calloused from years of manual labor. What exactly are you suggesting, Robert? It was the first time Sam had used his first name, and it felt like a small but significant shift in their relationship. I'm suggesting you have more to offer the world than cleaning services, Robert said carefully. I'm suggesting that perhaps there's a way to help Lisa and continue the work you were meant to do. A doctor emerged from Lisa's room before Sam could respond. Dr. Wilson, your wife is asking for you. She seems more lucid now. Sam rose immediately, then paused and turned back to Robert. This conversation isn't over. No, Robert agreed. It's just beginning. As Sam disappeared into Lisa's room, Robert remained in the hallway, contemplating the magnitude of what he was considering, not just helping one couple, but potentially changing the trajectory of Alzheimer's research, and in the process redefining his own legacy. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from his board chairman. The quarterly meeting was approaching, and the board expected Robert to announce the acquisition of their struggling competitor. A move that would make Blackwell Innovations the largest tech corporation in the country, but would eliminate thousands of jobs. Robert silenced the call. For the first time in his career, he was questioning whether growth at any cost was truly success. Whether the empire he'd built was worth the price paid by people like Sam and Lisa Wilson. And in that sterile hospital hallway, a new vision began to take shape in Robert Blackwell's mind, one that might redeem both a forgotten doctor and a lonely billionaire. The Mount Sinai Neurology Wing gleamed with state-of-the-art technology. Lisa's new private room overlooked Central Park, a stark contrast to the dingy view of a parking lot at Queen's Memorial. This is too much, Sam murmured, as he arranged Lisa's few personal items, the photo of their wedding day, her favorite cardigan, the worn paperback of poetry she still read on her good days. It's not enough, Robert countered, watching as Lisa slept peacefully after her first treatment under the Munich Protocol. Not after what you've been through. A week had passed since Robert's revelation about Sam's research being continued at Johns Hopkins. Neither man had brought it up again, but the possibility hung between them like an unfinished sentence. Dr. Catherine Saunders entered, tablet in hand. In her 50s, with steel-grey hair and keen eyes, she was one of the country's leading Alzheimer's specialists, Dr. Wilson. She greeted Sam with professional courtesy before acknowledging Robert with a nod. Mr. Blackwell. How is she responding? Sam asked immediately. It's early, but her biomarkers are showing promising changes, Dr. Saunders reported. The targeted immunotherapy is reducing amyloid plaque formation exactly as we'd hoped. Relief washed over Sam's face. For the first time since Robert had met him, he looked his age, not older. There's something else, Dr. Saunders continued, her expression carefully neutral. I've been reviewing your research from Johns Hopkins, Dr. Wilson. Your work on neural regeneration pathways was ahead of its time. Sam stiffened. That was a lifetime ago, perhaps, but science doesn't forget, she replied. The team at Johns Hopkins has reached an impasse on the very problem you were addressing when you left the field. Sam's gaze drifted to Lisa. I made my choice. What if you didn't have to choose? Robert interjected. Both doctors turned to him in surprise. What if you could continue your research and ensure Lisa gets the best care possible? I don't understand, Sam said cautiously. Robert had spent the past week preparing for this moment. I'm establishing a new research center at Blackwell Innovations, focused exclusively on neurodegenerative diseases, with particular emphasis on early-onset Alzheimer's. Dr. Saunders couldn't hide her shock. That's a significant undertaking. Initial funding will be $200 million, Robert continued calmly. With more to follow, based on progress. Sam's face had gone pale. And you want me to lead it, Robert finished for him, as scientific director. The silence that followed was profound. Sam looked from Robert to his sleeping wife and back again, a war of emotions playing across his features. You haven't been in a lab for 8 years, Dr. Saunders said gently. The field has advanced. I'm aware, Sam replied, a hint of steel entering his voice. I've read every journal article published in the field since I left, between night shifts, on lunch breaks, whenever I could. Robert felt a surge of admiration for this man, who had refused to abandon his passion even when circumstances had forced him from his calling. You kept up with the research, Robert realized aloud, all this time. Of course I did, Sam said simply. Just because I couldn't practice doesn't mean I stopped caring about finding a cure. Dr. Saunders was looking at Sam with newfound respect. The Hopkins team would benefit enormously from collaboration with someone who understands the foundational theories as you do. And Lisa, Sam asked, his priority unchanged, would continue her treatment here with Dr. Saunders, Robert assured him. With a private nurse to assist when you're working, every resource would be available to her. Sam moved to the window, looking out at the city spread before him. When he turned back, his expression had changed, the weary resignation replaced by something Robert hadn't seen before, hope. If, and it's a big if, I were to consider this, I would need complete autonomy over the research direction. No corporate interference, no pressure for patents or profitable applications. Agreed, Robert said without hesitation, and I would need to bring in my own team, people I trust who share my vision. Of course. Sam studied Robert intently. Why? Are you really doing this? The truth, Robert. Robert had asked himself the same question repeatedly over the past weeks. The answer had come to him in the pre-dawn hours, as he sat alone in his vast penthouse watching the city wake below. Because I've spent my life building things that won't last, he said honestly. You and Lisa have shown me what truly matters. This research center, it could help thousands of people like Lisa. It could be something real, something meaningful. Sam held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll need to discuss it with Lisa on a good day. Of course, Robert agreed. Take all the time you need. As Robert left the hospital, his phone rang. It was his board chairman again, insistent that they discuss the pending acquisition. This time, Robert answered. We need to talk, he said firmly. There's been a change of plans. Have you lost your mind? Harold Vance, chairman of the Blackwell Innovations Board, glared at Robert across the conference table. $200 million for an Alzheimer's research center. That's not our business. The emergency board meeting had been contentious from the start. Robert had just announced his plan to establish the Wilson Center for Neurological Research and to halt the acquisition of their struggling competitor, TechCore. Our business is innovation, Robert replied calmly. This represents the ultimate innovation, extending and improving human cognitive function. Our shareholders expect the TechCore acquisition, Meredith Chen, the CFO, interjected. The stock will plummet when they learn we've abandoned it. Temporarily, Robert clarified. I'm proposing we delay, not cancel. TechCore isn't going anywhere. Harold's face had grown increasingly red. And this janitor you want to put in charge, Dr. Samuel Wilson, Robert corrected sharply, was one of the foremost neurologists in the country before personal circumstances intervened. His research laid the groundwork for the Munich Protocol that's showing such promise. The board members exchanged skeptical glances. These were people Robert had personally selected over the years, hard-driving executives who prioritized growth and profit above all else. People like the man he'd been just weeks ago. Even if that's true, Harold pressed, he's been out of the field for nearly a decade. Why not hire someone current, someone with an established reputation? Because Sam Wilson has something no one else has, Robert answered, a personal stake in finding a cure. That kind of motivation can't be bought. The discussion continued for hours. By the end, Robert had secured a compromise. The research center would proceed, but with a reduced initial budget of $50 million. The TechCore acquisition would be delayed by 6 months to assess the viability of the new venture. It wasn't the unqualified victory Robert had hoped for, but it was enough to begin. As the board members filed out, Harold lingered behind. "I've known you for 30 years, Robert," he said quietly. "Never once have you put anything above this company's growth. What's really going on here?" Robert considered deflecting, but decided on honesty. "I'm 64 years old, Harold. I've spent my life accumulating wealth I can't possibly spend and power that hasn't made me happy. Maybe it's time I built something that matters beyond quarterly reports." Harold studied him with narrowed eyes. "This janitor, Wilson, he must have some hold over you. Blackmail? Threats?" The suggestion was so absurd that Robert actually laughed. "Sam Wilson is the most honorable man I've ever met. He gave up everything to care for his wife. How many of us can say we'd do the same? So this is about guilt," Harold concluded. "You're atoning for your sins by playing philanthropist." "Maybe I am," Robert acknowledged. "Is that so wrong?" Harold shook his head. "It's dangerous, Robert, for you and for this company. The board went along today out of respect for your track record, but they'll be watching closely. One misstep, and they'll move to protect the company, even from its founder." The warning was clear. Robert had bought time, nothing more. That evening, he visited the Wilsons at Mount Sinai. Lisa was having one of her good days, alert, engaged, her wit still, razor-sharp despite the disease eroding her memories. "So you're causing trouble in the boardroom on our account," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Sam told me all about your grand plans." Robert smiled. Some resistance was expected. "And you're prepared for it to get worse?" Sam asked, perceptive. "As always." Robert nodded. "The board sees this as a distraction, a personal project without strategic value." "Isn't it?" Lisa challenged gently. "You barely knew us a month ago." "That's true," Robert admitted. "But what began as, I'm not sure what, curiosity, guilt, has become something more. I believe in what we're trying to do here." Lisa reached for his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Then fight for it, Robert. God knows we've been fighting long enough. It's about time we had reinforcements." As Robert drove home that night, Harold's warning echoed in his mind. He was risking much, his company, his legacy, the trust of the board, for people who had been strangers just weeks ago. Yet for the first time in decades, Robert felt truly alive. The challenge energized him in ways that business acquisitions and profit margins never had. The buzzing of his phone interrupted his thoughts. It was Michael, his assistant. "Sir, there's something you need to know." Michael's voice was tense. "Harold Vance has called an unofficial board meeting at his home tomorrow night." "I wasn't informed," Robert said, though he wasn't surprised. "You weren't meant to be," Michael replied. "I only know because my cousin works for Meredith Chen. They're discussing contingency plans, sir. In case you—" He hesitated. "In case I what, Michael?" "In case you become a liability." The Wilson Center for Neurological Research was taking shape. Robert had secured a floor in the Blackwell Towers research wing and expedited renovations. Equipment was being installed, and a team of scientists, hand-selected by Sam, was assembling. Despite the board's machinations, Robert pushed forward with characteristic determination. He divided his time between running Blackwell Innovations and overseeing the center's development, working 16-hour days with renewed energy. Sam, too, had transformed. As equipment arrived and lab spaces were prepared, the stooped janitor gradually straightened, revealing the commanding presence of Dr. Samuel Wilson, neuroscientist. He spoke with increasing confidence, directing contractors with the same precision he had once employed in the operating room. Today, they were interviewing the final candidate for the research team, Dr. Maya Patel, a brilliant young neurologist, whose work on protein misfolding had caught Sam's attention. "Your paper on tau protein aggregation was remarkable," Sam told her after she'd completed her presentation. "Particularly your approach to preventing the initial misfolding cascade." Dr. Patel looked startled. "You've read my work?" "Every word," Sam confirmed. "Multiple times." Robert watched their interaction with satisfaction. This was what he'd envisioned, Sam reclaiming his place in the scientific community, bringing his unique perspective to bear on the disease that had derailed his life. "May I ask a personal question, Dr. Wilson?" Maya ventured after they'd discussed her potential role. Sam nodded cautiously. "I attended a lecture you gave at Johns Hopkins 10 years ago on neural regeneration pathways. It changed the direction of my research entirely." Sam's expression softened. "I remember that lecture, one of my last." "Everyone wondered what happened to you," she continued. "Rumors circulated, mental breakdown, ethical violations, secret government work. No one guessed you were." "Cleaning floors?" Sam finished for her with a wry smile. "Life takes unexpected turns, Dr. Patel." "But you're back now," she said, her admiration evident. "And I would be honored to join your team." After the interview, Robert and Sam walked through the half-completed lab spaces. Glass walls would soon separate research stations, and state-of-the-art equipment sat in crates waiting to be installed. "Dr. Patel is impressive," Robert observed. "You've assembled a strong team." "The best in their fields," Sam agreed. "People who care about the science, not just their careers." They paused at the large window overlooking Manhattan. In the distance, the spire of Mount Sinai Hospital was visible, where Lisa was undergoing her third treatment under the Munich protocol. "Any improvement?" Robert asked gently. Sam's expression was guarded. "Small signs. She remembered our anniversary date yesterday. First time in years." He hesitated. "But she forgot again this morning." Robert placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's early days." "I know." Sam took a deep breath. "The lab will be ready next week. We can begin preliminary work while the final equipment is calibrated." "And you're ready?" Robert asked. "To be Dr. Wilson again?" Sam smiled faintly. "I never stopped being Dr. Wilson. I just lost access to the tools of my trade for a while." As they continued their tour, Robert's phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Vance making moves. Board vote scheduled for next week. Topic confidential." Robert slipped the phone back into his pocket without commenting. The board was accelerating their timeline, whatever it might be. He needed to secure the research center's future before they could act. "There's something we need to discuss," Robert said as they reached his office. "The board is concerned about our project." Sam's expression darkened. "Meaning they want to shut us down before we've begun." "They're trying," Robert acknowledged, "but I've taken steps to protect what we're building." He unlocked his desk drawer and removed a leather portfolio, sliding it across to Sam. "The Wilson Center for Neurological Research is now an independent non-profit foundation, fully funded for 10 years, regardless of what happens at Blackwell Innovations." Sam opened the portfolio, scanning the legal documents with widening eyes. "How did you manage this?" "I converted a portion of my personal holdings," Robert explained. "The Foundation owns this floor of the building, the equipment, everything. It can't be touched by the board or any future leadership of Blackwell. This must have cost." "It doesn't matter what it cost," Robert interrupted. "What matters is that your work continues no matter what." Sam closed the portfolio, visibly moved. "You've thought of everything." "Not quite everything," Robert admitted. "There's still the matter of my continued leadership at Blackwell. The board is planning something, a vote of no confidence, perhaps." "Can they force you out?" "You're the founder. I'm still the majority shareholder, but they can make things difficult. Create divisions within the company, undermine initiatives, leak concerns to the press." Sam considered this. "So what's your plan?" For the first time in weeks, Robert looked uncertain. "I'm not sure there is one. I may have to choose Blackwell Innovations or the Research Center. After everything you've built, your life's work." Robert gazed out at the city, at the empire he'd created over decades of relentless ambition. "Perhaps it's time for new work, a new legacy." Before Sam could respond, Robert's phone rang. "Dr. Saunders from Mount Sinai. It's Lisa," she said without preamble when Robert answered. "You both need to come immediately." They found Lisa in the intensive care unit, surrounded by medical equipment. Dr. Saunders met them at the door, her expression grave. "She had a severe reaction to the immunotherapy," she explained, "a rare complication called ARIA, amyloid-related imaging abnormalities. It caused brain swelling and microhemorrhages." Sam rushed to Lisa's bedside, taking her hand. She was unconscious, her breathing assisted by a ventilator. "Why wasn't I notified at the first sign of complications?" he demanded, the doctor in him emerging forcefully. Dr. Saunders' hesitation was brief, but noticeable. "The symptoms emerged suddenly, by the time we recognized what was happening." "That's not possible," Sam interrupted. "Aria presents with headache, confusion, nausea, gradual symptoms that would have been apparent for hours before a crisis." Robert watched the exchange with growing unease. Something wasn't right. "Let me see her chart," Sam insisted. Dr. Saunders handed over her tablet reluctantly. Sam scrolled through the records, his expression hardening. She reported a severe headache at 9 a.m., confusion at 11, nausea and dizziness at noon. But the emergency response wasn't initiated until 3 p.m. He looked up, fury in his eyes. "Why?" Dr. Saunders's professional composure cracked. "I wasn't her attending physician this morning. Dr. Mercer was covering my rounds." "Where is he?" Sam demanded. "Sam," Robert interjected gently, "let's focus on Lisa right now. We can address the delays later." But Sam wasn't listening. He had continued scrolling through Lisa's records, his face paling further. "These aren't the standard Munich protocol dosages," he said quietly. "They're elevated, almost double what she should have received." Dr. Saunders looked stricken. "That can't be right." Sam thrust the tablet at her. "See for yourself. Someone increased her dosage 3 days ago, without documentation of the decision or consent." Robert stepped forward. "I want a full investigation, immediately, and I want Dr. Mercer in this room within the hour." As Dr. Saunders hurried out, Sam collapsed into the chair beside Lisa's bed, still clutching her hand. "I should have been here," he whispered. "I should have been checking her treatment records myself." "You couldn't have known," Robert tried to reassure him. "I'm a doctor," Sam said bitterly. "Her doctor. Monitoring treatment protocols is basic care. You've been establishing the research center at my insistence." Sam looked up, his eyes haunted. "That's what I wanted to believe, that I was doing it for Lisa, for other patients like her. But the truth is, I was doing it for me, because I missed being Dr. Wilson. I missed the respect, the purpose." His voice broke. "And now Lisa is paying the price for my ego." Robert started to protest, but was interrupted by the arrival of a young doctor, presumably Dr. Mercer. The man looked terrified. "Dr. Wilson," he began nervously, "I can explain why my wife received double the recommended dose of an experimental treatment." Sam's voice was dangerously quiet. "Why warning signs were ignored for hours? Please explain." Dr. Mercer swallowed hard. "I received instructions from administration to accelerate Mrs. Wilson's treatment schedule." "What administration?" Robert demanded. "Who specifically gave this order?" "I don't know," Dr. Mercer admitted. "The directive came through Dr. Saunders, but she indicated it originated from hospital leadership." "That's impossible," Robert said. "I've been personally overseeing Lisa's care plan. No changes were authorized." Dr. Mercer looked confused. "But the directive mentioned Blackwell Innovations specifically. It stated that as the financial sponsor of the treatment, the company had requested accelerated results." A cold feeling spread through Robert's chest. "When exactly did this directive come through?" 3 days ago. Tuesday morning. The timing was unmistakable. The day after the emergency board meeting. The day Harold Vance had begun making his moves against Robert. "Get out," Robert told Dr. Mercer, his voice shaking with rage, "and send Dr. Saunders back in. Now." When they were alone again, Robert turned to Sam. "I think I know what happened." Sam looked up, his expression hollow. "Someone used Lisa to get to you. To us. To the research center," Robert confirmed grimly. "By demonstrating the dangers of the Munich Protocol, they undermine the foundation of our research direction." "Who would do such a thing?" "My board," Robert said simply. "Or more specifically, Harold Vance. He warned me they would protect the company from what they see as my distraction." Sam's face transformed as understanding dawned. "They deliberately harmed my wife to sabotage our work?" "To sabotage me," Robert corrected. "Lisa was just collateral damage." The quiet that followed was deafening. In that silence, something fundamental shifted between the two men. What had begun as an unlikely alliance born of curiosity and compassion crystallized into something stronger, a shared purpose forged in righteous anger. "What happens now?" Sam finally asked. Robert's expression hardened. "Now we fight back." "This is a copy of the directive authorizing Lisa's treatment changes." Robert slid the document across the conference table toward Harold Vance. "Note the Blackwell Innovations letterhead." "The forged signature." Harold barely glanced at it. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Let me refresh your memory," Robert continued, his voice deadly calm. "You conspired with someone at Mount Sinai, likely on the board of directors, given the level of cooperation, to sabotage Lisa Wilson's treatment, to discredit me and the research center." The emergency board meeting had been called by Robert himself, catching Harold and his allies off guard. The entire board was present, watching the confrontation with varying degrees of shock and discomfort. "That's an outrageous accusation," Harold blustered. "You have no proof." "Actually, I do." Robert nodded to Michael, who distributed folders to each board member. "Inside, you'll find documentation of communications between Harold and James Westfield, chairman of Mount Sinai's board, phone records, emails sent through private servers, and testimony from Dr. Mercer confirming the source of the directive." The board members opened their folders, murmurs of dismay spreading around the table as they reviewed the evidence. "This is manufactured," Harold insisted, though his face had gone pale. "A desperate attempt to maintain control." "What's desperate?" Robert countered. "Is endangering a patient's life to protect your vision of this company's future." Meredith Chen, the CFO who had opposed Robert's plans from the beginning, looked up from her folder with genuine horror. "Harold, did you really do this?" "Of course not," Harold snapped. "Robert is unhinged. This fixation on his janitor friend and this research center, it's clearly affected his judgment." "My judgment is perfectly sound," Robert replied. which is why I've already sent copies of this evidence to the district attorney, the medical, licensing board, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. The color drained completely from Harold's face. You're bluffing. Try me. Robert's gaze was unwavering. Lisa Wilson nearly died, Harold. A brilliant surgeon with early-onset Alzheimer's was deliberately given an improper dosage of experimental medication to serve your corporate agenda. How do you think that will play in court, in the press? The silence that followed was absolute. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, distancing themselves physically and metaphorically from Harold. What do you want? Harold finally asked, his voice barely audible. Your resignation, effective immediately. Robert's tone left no room for negotiation. And your public support for the Wilson Center for Neurological Research. You can't be serious. Dead serious, Robert confirmed. You'll issue a statement praising the initiative as Blackwell Innovations' commitment to medical advancement. You'll endorse the original $200 million funding allocation, and you'll make a personal donation of $20 million to Lisa Wilson's care. Harold's face contorted with rage. That's extortion. No, Robert corrected coldly. It's justice, the bare minimum of justice for what you've done. He turned to address the entire board. The vote you planned for next week, to remove me as CEO, is now off the table. Instead, we'll be voting on a new direction for Blackwell Innovations, one that balances profit with purpose. What does that mean exactly? Meredith asked cautiously. It means we'll still pursue growth and innovation, but not at any cost, Robert explained. The Wilson Center is just the beginning. I'm proposing we allocate 15% of our annual profits to addressing critical societal needs through technological advancement. The board members exchanged glances, some skeptical, others intrigued. You're asking for a fundamental shift in our corporate identity, one director noted. I'm asking for a better legacy, Robert corrected. For all of us. He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. You have 24 hours to consider your positions. Those who can't embrace this new vision should prepare to step down alongside Harold. As the board members filed out, some already huddled in whispered conversations, Harold remained seated, staring at the evidence before him. You won't get away with this, he said when they were alone. You've made powerful enemies. I've been making powerful enemies my entire career, Robert replied calmly. The difference is, now I'm fighting for something that matters. Later that evening, Robert sat beside Lisa's hospital bed. She had regained consciousness, but remained weak, her recovery uncertain. Sam entered, looking exhausted but determined. The doctors say the swelling is subsiding. If the trend continues, she should stabilize within days. That's good news, Robert said sincerely. Sam took the seat opposite him, Lisa's hand cradled gently between his own. I heard about the board meeting. Michael told me what happened. Harold will resign, Robert confirmed. The others will fall in line. At what cost to you? Robert considered the question. Probably some high-profile departures, short-term stock volatility, nothing that can't be managed. Sam studied him thoughtfully. You're different from the man I used to clean up after. The one who wouldn't even look at me in the hallway. I hope so, Robert said quietly. Why? Sam asked. Why did you follow me that night? Why did any of this matter to you? It was a question Robert had asked himself repeatedly over the past weeks. The answer had evolved, becoming clearer with each passing day. Because I recognized something in you, he finally said. A kind of integrity I'd forgotten existed. The kind that makes a brilliant doctor become a janitor to care for his wife. The kind I'd lost somewhere along the way. Lisa stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked disoriented momentarily, then focused on Sam with perfect clarity. Sammy, she murmured, you look terrible. Sam laughed, tears springing to his eyes. Thanks a lot. You need to sleep, she insisted, her voice weak, but her mind evidently sharp. Both of you. She included Robert in her gaze. You can't save the world if you're exhausted. We're not trying to save the world, Sam told her. Just you. Lisa smiled faintly. I'm not the only one with Alzheimer's, Sam. Never was. She squeezed his hand. It's time to be Dr. Wilson again, for everyone who needs you. As Robert watched their exchange, he felt a profound sense of purpose settle over him. The Wilson Center would proceed as planned. Lisa would continue her treatment under proper supervision, and Blackwell Innovations would pioneer a new model of corporate responsibility. The battle with the board had been won, but Robert knew the war was just beginning. Changing an entire corporate culture and his own reputation as a ruthless businessman would be the work of years, not days. But for the first time in decades, Robert Blackwell was thinking beyond quarterly reports and annual profits. He was thinking about legacy, not of wealth or power, but of meaningful change. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking, Blackwell Innovations announces major initiative in medical research. The story was already leaking. By morning, it would be everywhere. Robert silenced his phone and returned his attention to Sam and Lisa, the unlikely catalysts for his transformation. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The janitor, the forgotten doctor, the patient, and the billionaire, bound by circumstance and choice into something none of them could have imagined just months before. The true test, however, was yet to come. 5 years later, the Wilson Center for Neurological Research occupied its own building now, a gleaming glass structure adjacent to Blackwell Tower. On its rooftop garden, amid blooming planters and comfortable seating areas, Robert Blackwell stood beside Sam Wilson, both men gazing out at the Manhattan skyline. 5 years, Robert mused, leaning slightly on his cane, a concession to his recent knee surgery. At tire 69, he moved more slowly, but his mind remained sharp as ever. Sometimes I can hardly believe it. Sam nodded, his once grey hair now completely white, but his posture straight and proud. From janitor to research director. It still feels like someone else's life sometimes. The door to the garden opened, and Lisa Wilson emerged, accompanied by her nurse. At 65, she was thinner than she'd once been, but her eyes were bright and alert. She walked slowly but steadily toward the men. There you two are, she called. Hiding from your own celebration. Robert smiled, just taking a moment to reflect before the chaos begins. Today marked both the 5th anniversary of the Wilson Center and the formal announcement of their most significant breakthrough yet, a treatment protocol that had shown unprecedented success in halting the progression of early-onset Alzheimer's. Clinical trials had demonstrated a 68% reduction in cognitive decline, with some patients showing actual improvement in memory function. The auditorium is filling up, Lisa informed them. Every seat taken, standing room only. The governor just arrived, and I spotted at least 3 senators. Sam took his wife's hand. How are you feeling today? It was a question loaded with meaning. Lisa had been the first patient to receive their experimental treatment 2 years ago, after the Munich protocol had reached its limits. I remembered. Our first date this morning, she answered with a smile. The coffee shop near Johns Hopkins. You spilled your latte all over my medical textbooks. Sam's eyes widened. You haven't recalled that in 12 years, she finished for him. I know, it came back clear as day while I was getting dressed. The way you blushed when you tried to dry the pages with your sleeve. Robert looked away, giving them a moment of privacy as Sam embraced his wife. Emotion overwhelming him. Lisa's case had become the center's most compelling success story. Not a cure, not yet, but a remarkable stabilization followed by gradual recovery of long-lost memories. We should head downstairs, Robert suggested after a moment. Michael will have a fit if we're late for the presentation. Michael, once Robert's assistant, now served as Chief Operations Officer for both Blackwell Innovations and the Wilson Center, a bridge between the corporate and research sides of what had become Robert's dual legacy. As they made their way to the elevator, Robert reflected on the transformation of the past 5 years. The battle with his board had ultimately resulted in a significant restructuring. Harold Vance had resigned in disgrace, facing both civil and criminal charges for his role in endangering Lisa's life. Several other directors had followed, unwilling to embrace Robert's new vision. Blackwell Innovations had initially suffered, stock prices dropping, key executives departing, competitors circling like sharks, sensing blood. But Robert had remained steadfast, hiring leaders who shared his commitment to balancing profit with purpose. The Wilson Center had become the flagship of this new approach, fully funded by Blackwell Innovations, but operated as an independent research foundation, with all discoveries made available to the global scientific community without patent restrictions. "Nervous about your speech?" Lisa asked as they rode the elevator down. Robert shook his head. Not nervous, just reflective. The truth was, Robert had been contemplating his own mortality lately. At 69, with no children or close family, he had been increasingly focused on what would outlive him. The speech he would deliver today would announce not just their medical breakthrough, but his most personal decision yet. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation as Robert took the stage, flanked by Sam and a team of researchers. Cameras flashed and live feeds broadcast the event. Globally, 5 years ago, Robert began, his voice strong despite his age, I followed a janitor who was taking leftover food from my company's executive lounge. What I discovered changed everything, not just for him or for me, but potentially for millions of people affected by Alzheimer's disease. He outlined the center's journey, from Sam's original theories developed decades earlier to their recent breakthrough, careful to credit each researcher by name, a practice he'd adopted to ensure no contribution went unrecognized. Today, we announce the commencement of expanded clinical trials for Protocol WR7, he continued. Early results suggest we may have found a way not just to slow Alzheimer's progression, but in some cases to partially reverse its effects. The audience erupted in applause. In the front row, Lisa wiped tears from her eyes, surrounded by other trial participants whose lives had been transformed by the center's work. But there is another announcement I wish to make today, Robert continued when the applause subsided. A personal one. The room quieted, sensing the gravity in his tone. When I began this journey, I was motivated partly by curiosity, partly by guilt, and partly by a desperate need to find meaning in my life beyond accumulating wealth. What I found through my friendship with Sam and Lisa Wilson was something I never expected, a family. He paused, emotion momentarily overwhelming him. Sam stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on his shoulder. Today, I am announcing the formation of the Blackwell Wilson Foundation, endowed with my entire personal fortune of $17 billion. Upon my death, this foundation will continue to fund the research center in perpetuity, while expanding its mission to address other neurodegenerative diseases and to ensure treatments are accessible to patients regardless of financial means. Gasps rippled through the audience. It was one of the largest charitable commitments in history. Furthermore, Robert continued, I am formally naming Dr. Samuel Wilson as my successor to oversee both the foundation and my majority stake in Blackwell Innovations. Sam's head snapped up in shock. They had discussed the foundation, but not this transfer of corporate power. In Sam, I have found not just a brilliant scientist, but a man of extraordinary integrity, someone who understands that true wealth lies not in what we acquire, but in what we give. There is no one I trust more to continue the work we've begun, As the audience rose in a standing ovation, Robert turned to Sam, whose expression reflected disbelief, gratitude, and a sudden weight of responsibility. "Why didn't you tell me?" Sam whispered. "Because you would have tried to talk me out of it," Robert replied with a smile. "I'm a doctor, not a CEO," Sam protested. "You're both," Robert countered, "and more importantly, you understand what matters. You always have." Later, as the celebration continued around them, Robert found himself alone with Lisa in a quiet corner. "Of the reception. You've given Sam quite a burden," she observed, her medical training still evident in her perceptive analysis. "I've given him a purpose beyond the lab," Robert corrected gently. "One that will outlast both of us." Lisa studied him with the clarity that still came and went in her condition. "You followed him that night because you were lonely," she said suddenly. "Not just curious, desperately lonely." Robert didn't deny it. "I had everything and nothing. And now?" He glanced across the room, where Sam was deep in conversation with the governor, already advocating for increased state funding for Alzheimer's care. "Now I have what matters," Robert said simply. "Purpose, connection, the knowledge that something good will outlive me." Lisa took his hand, her surgeon's fingers now gnarled with age but still strong. "From one doctor to another, your prognosis is excellent," Robert laughed, squeezing her hand in return. "Coming from you, that means everything." As the evening wound down, Robert found himself back on the rooftop garden, watching the city lights twinkle in the darkness. Sam joined him, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "To new beginnings," Sam offered, handing Robert a glass. "And unexpected friendships," Robert added. They stood in comfortable silence, 2 men from vastly different worlds, brought together by chance and choice. "We've got a long way to go," Sam finally said. "The treatment isn't a cure, not yet. But it's hope," Robert replied. "Real hope, for the first time." Below them, the Wilson Center glowed with light as researchers continued their work into the night, and in hospitals across the city, patients and families were hearing the news of the breakthrough, feeling that same precious commodity, hope, perhaps for the first time in years. Robert Blackwell, once known only for his wealth and ruthless business tactics, had found a different legacy, not in the tower that bore his name, but in the lives that would be changed by what he, Sam, and Lisa had built together. It had begun with a paper bag of leftover food and a simple act of curiosity. It would continue long after all of them were gone, a legacy of compassion, purpose, and healing that no fortune could measure.